everyone, my name is Kat Savage and I'm a professional artist, clinical hypnotherapist and well-being expert working with those in the creative arts sector. In my line of work, I get to meet some amazing, colourful people, from actors to artists, people who live their lives by their own rules, fueled by passion and determination to bring their unique talents into the world. I wanted to discover what it took for people to leave the usual 9 to 5 and hop on a dream, to capture their bravest moments and share these meaningful conversations with you, so that together we can explore the ideas, emotions and moments that could potentially change our lives too. So let's keep talking, have some fun and enjoy the show. This week on the show, we speak to contemporary potter and Zen practitioner John Pollex. John was a natural creative from the start when he used to work on film sets in London. But after meeting a friend who introduced him to the world of ceramic art, John went on to study at Sir John Cass before becoming a technician at the prestigious Harrow School. With a deep interest in philosophy and Zen Buddhism, John travelled to Japan to learn about Japanese pottery techniques and also to study under the tuition of Buddhist monks before taking his precepts and returning to the UK, where he went on to become one of the top potters in the southwest of England. It is with great pleasure that I get to introduce you to this incredible craftsman, John Pollex. John Pollex, professional potter. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, thank you very much, Kat.
What have you been up to this morning?
Well, I've just made some small square dishes. Well, I showed my assistant, who comes on Saturday, a nice guy called Sam, and I showed him how to make them, and then I thought, well, I might as well make some more. And, you know, I knew you were coming, so I thought, well, I'll leave it till the end of the week and I can paint them. And then when he comes on Saturday or Sunday, he can paint his. So, yeah, I've been plotting out some shapes on these square dishes.
Excellent.
Basically.
I mean, we're sat here today in your studio and it's so colourful and so happy. And that's how I see your work. It's very, very vibrant and colourful. Talk to us a little bit about your aesthetic. How would you describe your own work? What inspires you?
This work now is completely different to the work I started doing in 71 down at the Barbican. In those days, I made traditional slipware, which was kind of like icing a cake, to be sort of simple about it. And I only used basically 4 colours, traditional English slipware colours. And then around about 1985, I decided for a change. And so I developed a palette of colours and started playing, really. And then originally I went to see an exhibition in the Whitechapel Gallery. It was an exhibition by Howard Hodgkin. And the colours were just amazing. And on the wall was a big round plate, about 4 foot wide. And I thought, God, that'd look great on a plate. So I bought the catalogue, went home and started playing. And it developed from there. So I decided to learn about colour by looking at mostly painters, Howard Hodgkin, Rothko, Patrick Heron, Robert Natkin, people like that, really, who use colour. And I guess most of them were basically abstract painters. And I've always liked pots that were more sort of off the beaten track, if you like. You know, and one of my favourites, of course, was Peter Volkos, who literally turned ceramics upside down in America. Hans Hofmann used this technique called push-pull, where he put one colour next to another, and one colour pushed it forward and another colour pushed it back, and using several colours together. So I started playing around with that, which was really, really good fun to do. And then I also looked at David Hockney went through a phase of using the camera and taking photographs and then joining them up, mostly what's that camera that you use where it print straight away. Called
like a Polaroid camera.
Polaroid, yeah. He used a Polaroid camera, and he got loads of these shots and then put them together like a jigsaw. So they were really interesting negative spaces. And so I've always been sort of interested in the negative space. I mean, Howard Hodgkin, I mean, he was amazing. I was watching him last night, actually, and he could sometimes take 4 or 5 years to make a painting. But what he would do, he would work on it, and then he would cover it up, put it face against the wall. And he's usually got, or he did have when he was alive, he'd have something up to 30 paintings on the go at the same time. And the interesting thing is, Kat, that, you know, when you look at them, they look so instant, you know. And you think, crikey, I wonder how that, you know, I mean, I could, you know, I'm not saying I could have, but I mean...
you look at it and you think, actually, I could do that, but that's the skill involved, isn't it? Because if it looks easy, then it's taken probably more work than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, my big dishes, people used to say to me, how long does it take to make one of those? I mean, they're about 20 inches across, you know. And I would just say, 20 years and an hour, you know. Well, they did. But now I spend a lot longer on one piece. So
I mean... You know, I recently bought one of your thumb pots, which I absolutely love. It's got pride of place on my shelf. I want to build up that collection, just saying. And again, you know, you said before about that perfectly imperfect, almost rough and ready organic thing. And I love that. And I think it's really rare to see it these days. Why do you think sort of the organic shape has gone away?
Ceramics in art colleges now has changed completely. I mean, when I was learning, most of the colleges, and they're nearly all closed now, sadly, we were taught in the tradition of Japan, repetition throwing. You know, you'd be told to make a shape for a day, and you'd make that shape, and the potter who set the shape up, or the teacher, he would go around and he would, you know, criticise all the work. And I mean, nowadays it's all about design. You know, you design on computers. Well, you know, we were taught to design on the wheel with a lump of clay. I think that's the main reason. Most of the art colleges now don't teach repetition throwing. I mean, if somebody said to me, I've got a son or a daughter who wants to be a potter, how do you suggest they take it up? The first thing I'd say is don't go to art college. I mean it. I wouldn't send anybody to an art college now.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you could get an apprenticeship at the Leach Pottery, you could go to Clay College in Stoke, or if you're lucky, you could get a kind of an assistant's job or an apprenticeship with a professional potter. Someone like myself, old school, but there's not many of us around now that would be making the sort of work that a student could make and see it through, you know. And I mean, somebody said to me once about my plates, you know, they're a bit expensive for a plate, aren't they? And I would just turn around and say, yeah, and I'd hate it if you put a meal on top of it, because it took me a day to paint it and you're going to cover it up with some slop.
I mean, I'm looking around the studio now, and I mean, I would never put anything on your gorgeous, gorgeous pots. They're just fabulous. And like I said, mine's pride of place on my mantelpiece, which is beautiful. And it really adds something to my space. And I enjoy looking at it. I enjoy turning it around and seeing all of those different facets, which is beautiful. And I think you can't buy that in the shops anymore.
Oh, no,
it's all the same. It's all the same.
No.
Talking about your youth and going to art school, I want to know a little bit about your time growing up. Where did you grow up? What were your family like? Were you aware of your creative spark when you were young?
I think when we moved to London, that was great because, you know, London's a great teacher.
Yeah.
You know, and I lived in a block of flats, and there was a family in the flats that I sort of really liked being part of. My mum was okay, but my dad didn't really, he wanted me to be architect or something. I didn't want to do that. And the family I linked up with, John the father, I mean, he was like my surrogate dad, really. And he was lovely, you know. I mean, he was a big drinker and he worked in Covent Garden Fruit Market. But, you know, he took me to football, took me to cricket, took me to ice hockey, took me to motor racing, you know. And I was initiated into sport through him. And I grew up, I mean, our kitchen window, you could see Highbury Stadium where the Arsenal play. And he took me there when I was about 10. And, you know, and I've been an Arsenal fan ever since. But, and then I started, I went to these philosophy lectures in the West End of London. Basically, they were offering the teachings of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky and some Sufi teaching. And
what inspired you to go towards philosophy at that point, if you were sort of sporty?
Well, it's that old nutmeg about why am I here?
Yeah.
One day I was out somewhere and I suddenly looked up and I thought, why am I here? You know, what's the purpose of me being here? And that was really the beginning of a search for self-knowledge, understanding and that sort of thing. So I was looking for answers, if you like. And on the tubes in London, there were posters for philosophy and economics, and they were run by the School of Economic Science. And I didn't realise at the time, but it was a big organisation. And we got initiated into a form of meditation the second year. The first year, we did a kind of an exercise which was preparatory for meditation.
Were you aware of meditation at that point, like before you went to study philosophy?
Yeah, I think one of the first things I got into was Buddhism.
I did my A-level in Buddhist philosophy for the same reason. I think I was 17 and questioning almost exactly like you, like, why am I here? And then I didn't even realise that Buddhist philosophy was even something you could study. And then when it came up in school, and I was really lucky that I had that opportunity in school to study it, and it really did open my eyes, and it helped me to understand why. It helped me to understand the difference between religion versus a way of life, like a lifestyle, which the Buddhist philosophy was showing me.
Yeah, most religions. Is a form of worship of an idol of some description. Whereas I think Buddhism, kind of like you've just said, offers a teaching that helps you to understand yourself so that you can be free of suffering. We all suffer. I mean, that's one of the basic principles of Buddhism, is that we all suffer regardless. And how to understand suffering. And suffering, basically, I think, comes about through belief. We've all got beliefs, and once you believe, you've got the opposite. So if I like one thing, say I like right and the other person likes left, you know, you've got conflict. When you get to being into politics and religion, you can see that, you know, those beliefs are what create conflict, eventually war. So it helps you to see what the causes are and how in your own life, you know, you create a conflict, and how to understand it and to go beyond it, really. So
here you are in London, you're settling down into philosophy, you're learning about meditation. How did that affect your relationships with your friends? Because there are not many people I can imagine at that point that would have been interested in philosophy at such a young age. Did you find that you lost friendships through it? Did you find that you found closer friendships? What happened next?
Well, that's interesting because where I grew up really near Hornsey Art College, and most of my friends were art students, and I always wanted to go to art school, but because I left at 15, I hadn't got any qualifications to go to art school. But there was a friend of mine who was a painter, and and he lived in a house full of artists. And every Saturday, there was a bunch of us used to go there. And then, to cut it short, one day a guy turned up, and we got chatting. And I said to him, what do you, Anthony, he was called, Anthony Kedros. And I said, well, what do you do, Anthony? He said, oh, I'm at Harrow doing ceramics. So I said, well, I left school. How can I learn ceramics? And then Richard said, you could go to Sir John Cass in Whitechapel in the East End. So I thought, well, I'll give it a go. So I went down there, got smartened up, went in and asked to see the person in charge. And this lady, Carol, came over and she said, what can I do? And I said, I want to be a potter. So she said, when can you start? I said, well, I could start now if you like. So she said, go home and change and come back. And honestly, that's how I started. I went back. And she said to me, this is Andrew. He was a bit younger than me. He'll show you where the clay is. And we went into this dark room full of bins of mud and clay. And he started wedging it up, thumping it down. And I said to him, don't that hurt the clay? And he looked at me. I thought, oh, yeah, he's got a right one here. But that's how I started. And I went back to, I was working in a scene shift, a scenery place then. And she said, that's marvellous. She said, the boss, I'll show you how to be self-employed. And I worked for her a couple of days a week and then went to college and eventually got into Harrow.
That's incredible.
But all my friends at that time, they were all into meditation. I mean, at Sir John Cass, we used to go to, it was the 60s then. So hippies and meditation and all that stuff was very, very prevalent. And we used to go to St. Boltoff's, which is a church in Whitechapel, when we'd finished, and we'd all sit there, with long hair and beads and everything. And the caretaker, after he got used to us, he just used to let us come in and meditate and get on with it, really.
What do you think you gained from meditation? And did any of that insight transfer into your pottery, into your ceramics at that point?
Yeah, well, I think you could describe meditation in a sense as a form of contemplation. Because when you're sitting or meditating, thoughts keep coming up. And the basic teaching is to let them come and let them go. So as they come up, you don't attract a thought or, they come up. But if you latch onto one and attract to it and build it up, then it becomes a story. Then you add a feeling to it. And then you start getting stressed out. And basically that's what we do outside of meditation, but it also happens in meditation. So you learn that thoughts are just thoughts and have no strength or value unless you build them up and add fuel to the fire, so to speak. So in a way, you start to contemplate. And what I do now in my work, it fits perfectly as a form of contemplation. I mean, most artists, most creative people, it's not just potters, most creative people contemplate. You don't just do it all in one go. I mean, musicians, I love improvisation. I mean, the music I love is mostly improvised, Indian music and jazz and Japanese shakuhachi music. I mean, I've gone through rock music and all that. I mean, it's all right, but it's the same old thing every time. They keep repeating themselves, and I think, don't you? I mean, you look around behind me, you won't see two pots the same.
Yeah.
You won't see them the same. Everyone is contemplated in a bit of improv, really.
Can you remember at that point in your life, talking of music, what music was being played? What was in the air as you were creating? What did you and your friends like to listen to?
I mean, the Beatles to me were the top. I mean, I worked on film locations and worked on a film, The Beatles. I met the Beatles on Salisbury Plain. I'm
sorry, what? Rewind.
Well,
talk to me about that.
Well, I was a driver, so I used to drive the mobile canteen or drive the van with all the food in it, and we'd go on location. And this film was called Help, and it was on the middle of Salisbury Plain somewhere, so there weren't any fans. The Beatles had a big caravan, and when they wanted something, they'd shout over to me to bring it in, and I used to go in. I mean, I'm the same age as them, and I just used to stay in as long as I could until I felt they want me out. But yeah, so I've always liked them. I mean, particularly George and John. I mean, Paul's okay. They're all good, but I mean, my favourites were George and John. You know, especially George with his connection with Indian music.
Yeah.
And Ravi Shankar.
Yeah, I'm just imagining your life at that point, and it's already so vibrant, much like your pots today. I mean, your style is very reminiscent of the life that you've led, which is incredible. So coming back to your ceramics, what did you do next? Did you go straight into creating and full time?
No, I went for a beer down in Crouch End.
Like you do.
Yeah, I mean, a pub I would never go in. And this old mate of mine came in from, the 60s. And I said, what are you doing here? And he said, what are you doing here? And we discussed. He said, well, me and another mate of yours, Laurie, we're living down in Milton Combe. Why don't you come down? So I went, packed up everything. Someone gave me a car, and I drove with all my belongings in this car to Milton Combe, just outside Plymouth. I was here 3 days, and the pottery on the Barbican came up.
That's
I had
incredible.
no money. I had 36 quid to my life. So I put that down as a deposit for the rent. And then I went back to this guy who sponsored me in Les in Somerset. And luckily he sponsored me. So, I mean, that was just another luck. A lot of people call it fate, but I met a Zen teacher once, and she said, no, there's no such thing as fate. It's causes and conditions that come together that create a situation that you find yourself in. And then I went to New Zealand in 1981 to do a tour. And during that tour, I met this American potter called Don Wright. So Don was amazing. I mean, he was like Anthony Quinn in Zorba the Greek.
I love that film.
he was that kind of person. He'd eat the guts out of a mountain. And he used to throw massive pots, and he was just outrageous. And I got on really well with him.
What's one of your happiest memories from that time in New Zealand?
The most memorable was the opening ceremony in Palmerston North. On a big lawn, there was about 250, I suppose, New Zealand potters, all in a big half circle. And then there was the meeting house it looked like a cricket pavilion with some seats outside. And the Maori elders were all sat there. And then they invited us to talk or sing. They sang, and I said, I can't sing. Don couldn't sing either. And he started to give a speech and started weeping. I was already dripping. And then it was my turn to go up, and I started babbling and dripping and made some comment about the grass or the area in front of the pavilion is called the marae, and that's holy ground. And my tears were sort of dropping on that. And anyway, so that at the end, I mean, we got loads of applause, and then we joined a big circle and formed hands, and all these little Maori kids came running over and started to sort of hold our hands. And then at the end, I went up to the elder, one of the elders, the chiefs or whatever they call them, and I said, "Look, I'm sorry about the tears and all that." And he said, "Don't worry." He said, "We'd rather see an expression of genuine emotion than listen to a long-winded speech for an hour." And I thought, great. So that experience was something I'll always remember. And I presented at the end of the seminar. I presented them with a teapot, just an ordinary teapot. And I was doing slipware then. And they told me later they'd built a little shelf and stuck it in the pavilion house with these massive longboat canoes and all the artifacts. So I felt really proud about that. Not that I get proud anyway, but...
It's so lovely to hear you talking about New Zealand in that way. And I know that my mum and dad have recently been to New Zealand. And I asked my dad that question recently. I said, if you could live anywhere else in the world, where would it be? And without hesitation, he went, New Zealand. And said pretty much the same thing. He said, the landscape and the people were just so generous and lovely and just a beautiful place.
I think, I'd have difficulty with that question. I mean, I think Japan would be my choice. Talk
to us about Japan. What have been your experiences in Japan, and how has it influenced your work?
I've been there twice. The first time I went to stay with a mate of mine, just to see all the things I was interested in, like ikebana, pottery, Zen gardens, temples, all that stuff. And I went down to Kyoto, and that was lovely. I went to see the two big temples, the Golden Temple and Ryoanji. And then I went to Kamakura, where there was lots of temples. That was brilliant. And then I forget how long ago it was. It wasn't that long ago, within the last 10 years anyway. I went with the monk that came here, Shinzen Roshi, and we did a retreat in his teacher's temple in Gifu Prefecture. And he was an old Rinzai teacher, old school. And his teacher was really old school. I mean, in the winter, he had opened the windows so it was really cold. And then in the summer, he'd shut them so they all sweated. And but with us, he was really, really, really nice, and he was really interesting. And on the last day, myself and one of the other guys that I went with, we took precepts with him. The precepts are a bit like the Ten Commandments, they're meant to protect you. For me, to be offered or given precepts in Japan by a Zen teacher and be given a Japanese Zen name was, like, for me, so auspicious. I mean,
what is your Japanese Zen name?
Gion Shinko.
What does it mean?
It means like gentle teacher.
Oh, I love that. And you are.
Well,
gentle but
firm.
And
then you get a kind of a what they call a rakusu, which symbolises the Buddha's robes. It's made of rags, and Shinzen Roshi would write your name in kanji on the back. And then you're given a bloodline certificate, which takes your bloodline right from Shinzen Roshi, who gave you the precepts, right the way back through various teachers to the Buddha.
Incredible.
So I got precepts in Rinzai Zen, and also I did precepts in 2000 in Soto Zen.
The way that you talk about your passion for the Buddhist lifestyle, has it ever crossed your mind to join the monastic lifestyle?
Not at all. No. I've studied lots of Zen teachings and life in Zen monasteries. And to be honest, it's a bit like going in the army.
Yeah.
However, when you come out, you're different. You're not a killer. You're, you're
a peaceful warrior.
You're much more compassionate. But also, I feel that now I've just been reading about a Zen teacher called Kodo Sawaki, and he's known as Homeless Kodo because he wouldn't take on a monastery, and he would just give talks, wherever he went. I mean, this was like 100 years ago, I think, maybe, I can't remember, but more recent. And I'm beginning to think that in the world as we know it now, which is different to when Zen originated, hundreds of years ago, there is still this sense of being a part of something, which still means you're attached. My feeling now is that I just want to meditate, like on my own. I mean, if the opportunity came to just practice with a renowned teacher, someone I respected, I would go along and maybe sit with him or meditate with him. But I've got a feeling now that there are so many groups, not just Zen groups, but other groups that give people, in a sense, security. And, and the point being, if that group suddenly goes, what do those people do? Do they feel rejected or lonely, or do they join another group for that sense of security? I mean, that's just my personal feelings about it. I mean, many, many people think differently to me, and they're very welcome to think that way. But for me personally, I mean, I sit generally twice a day, or meditate, we call it, twice a day. And I don't belong to any groups.
How does it keep your mental health in check? What do you think you benefit from when you do these activities that you can sort of apply in the real world?
It's not what I get, it's what I don't get.
Yeah.
If I find myself going off on one, I know I can bring myself back.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Through practicing Zen or Zen meditation, I see how thoughts arise. I see how I catch on to them. Good or bad thoughts, don't matter, whatever kind they are. I could start thinking about my birthday coming up. I can't wait to be, so many years old. But, and then I come back, I think, oh, that was a waste of time. It's a bit like going through a colour supplement or a magazine. You turn the pages over and then you find one that interests you and you read it and then you let it go. You turn over again. So
coming back to your work, what have been some of the highlights? I mean, you've mentioned New Zealand, and that's just sounds so emotional, but what have been some of the moments where you've thought, wow, I get to do this for a living?
Oh yeah, I got an email from this guy called Stoker, and I thought it was a bit of a scam, really.
Yeah.
He wanted to see some more of my pots, and I said to a mate of mine, "Does this look like a scam to you?" He said, "Google it." Anyway, it turned out to be the Duke of Devonshire, and he'd been to London and he'd seen my work, and he'd seen my work in the gallery and had bought some. And then he wanted more. So I sent him some images of the other work, plates and things, and he bought the lot.
Wow.
So, I'd never been to Chatsworth House, and I wanted to meet him anyway. So I delivered them. I said, can I come up and deliver them? And I did. Unfortunately, I didn't meet him then, but I met him at another event. And I had a look around Chatsworth. It was amazing. It was amazing. You've seen it on films and all that sort of thing. But
and your work lives there now, John, forevermore.
Yeah, and then more recently, after all the lectures, now we've had the lockdown, now Zoom has started coming up. And a friend of mine, Jenny Hale, she made that fox. She is now chairperson of the Cornwall Glass and Ceramics Association. And she said, would you do a 2-hour Zoom?
Oh, crikey.
For 100 people? Well, apart from New Zealand, I've never... the odd thing about it was, Kat, that, I did it from here.
Yeah.
So I'm in my little studio down the back, which is a quarter the size of this room. And to me, there's 100 people in there watching me, which was bizarre. The other thing was I couldn't see anybody,
Talking of new and innovative ways of doing stuff, what motivates you to keep going? Have you ever wanted to quit? And if so, what did you do to get yourself out of it? Or have you always been passionate about it and continuously motivated?
That's a good question. Yeah. As I've got older, I've made less and charged more. Well,
that's just the sign of a professional, John.
Yeah. But I guess I'm kind of... what's the word? Not addicted. Well, you could say addicted, but I'm obsessed by making them.
Compelled.
I'm, I mean, I don't work every day. I mean, sometimes I don't feel like doing much, so I don't do much. I don't sort of punish myself. I never think about giving up, because all the time it's a challenge to create something that isn't the same as the last one. I continually have to look to get started. I look at what I've done before. I mean, Hodgkin never looked. I mean, and I could never work out how he created these wonderful paintings from a memory, like a room or a view or something like that, because they're so abstract. I mean, that one, Highgate Woods. Now, when I grew up in North London, I used to go to not Highgate Woods, Highgate Ponds. I used to go to Highgate Ponds and go fishing on a bike. And then I worked in Highgate when I was 21. And actually, I can see that as Highgate.
That's really interesting. And we're looking again in the studio at Highgate Ponds by Howard Hodgkin.
Yeah.
Which, to describe to you listeners, it's like imagine a really loose painterly painting with bright yellow borders, blues, greens, mustard colours, ochres in the centre.
Yeah.
And I kind of get it. I can see the landscaping, like the
for
greens.
Me, they're the bushes.
Yeah, and then the
yellow
water
and
is
the green
blue.
blobs are the bushes. The blue might be the water.
Yeah.
I don't know what all this is. I mean, he's overpainted.
Yeah.
And he's very... he's one of the rare painters that paints the frame. Some of his frames are really beautiful.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that one on there is another one. That's learning about Russian music, that one.
And it's kind of like a red and yellow square, isn't it, with blues, greens and blacks.
That is
in
the
the
actual
middle.
picture frame.
That's crazy.
So,
it's beautiful, beautiful work.
And again, his sense of perspective going in,
Yeah.
That orange rectangular takes you right into the imagery in the middle. But how that represents Russian music, I haven't got a clue.
But then, I'm looking at your pots and I can see that same sort of similar use of colour. And because you've got kind of almost that negative space you're talking about, that black negative space, it brings it forward in a 3D way.
That's one of my techniques, is to use black. I mean, I was very friendly with Robert Lenkiewicz when he was alive. He's a Plymouth painter.
I used to meet him actually for lunch. He used to come into my cafe where I used to work on the Barbican.
But he always painted on a black background.
Yeah.
And that would send his colours forward. But I've always painted on black. And someone said to me the other day, you use white clay and that you cover it in black.
Yeah.
Why do you do that? And it is because, unlike painting, some of the colours burn out.
Yeah.
And if they burn out and you've got black underneath, it hides it. Whereas if you've got white, it looks thin and insipid in a way. But, I mean, talking of titles, I mean, I give titles to most of my plates on my flatware. I've got books in the drawer with. I like writing one-liners down. If somebody says something, I'll write it down. And the other day, I had a plate that was slightly chipped underneath. I couldn't send it to a gallery.
Sure.
It's a nice big plate, and my mate Al was here, and. I said to him, "Would you like it, Al?" I said, "I can't sell it. There's nothing wrong with the front."
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, that's really nice." And then he said, "What do you call it?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know, Al. Have a look at it." And he said, "Oh, it looks like a boat." So I said, "Oh, yeah, I think I can see that." He said, "Passing through." And I said, "Okay, passing through." and gave it a title. And then later on I thought, that's really interesting, passing through, isn't it? Because that's what you do in life. You just pass through. I mean, if I couldn't work, say something happened, that I couldn't work, doing pots, I would still find some way to express myself. I like writing. I do like writing. I've started loads of stories.
What advice would you give to young people, young creatives that are coming into ceramics now? What are the top tips and advice that you can give to them that maybe they wouldn't know or they wouldn't maybe think about when they're starting out?
it depends what sort of potter they've made their mind up, or they think they want to be. You just keep looking at lots and lots and lots of pots. Go online, choose well-known people, go to galleries. Just keep looking and looking and looking. If you just, I'm looking all the time. I never stop looking. I remember going to St Ives with Robert Lenkovich once and two friends. And we were walking through St Ives, and all of a sudden he saw this shadow on the wall. And he said, "Look at that shadow." And we would have walked past it. And it was just the way the light changed what was on the wall, And you just have to keep looking.
This podcast is called the Brave Moment Podcast. And what that refers to is those moments in your life where you've been changed either physically, mentally, or spiritually. And as a result, you've kind of evolved, or you've changed your values around the way that you work.
I did have a big experience in Japan the second time. I went with Daizen Roshi, the monk who stayed here.
Yeah.
And we were training with Shinzen Roshi. Roshi is a teacher. And we were doing this practice called the intensive practice. So you'd sit opposite, and the trip was designed to experience Kensho, which is like I suppose you'd call it like an enlightenment moment or something, an understanding moment or whatever. And we were doing this intensive. So the idea is, for example, I would say to you, "My name is John. Kat, tell me who you are." And you would start to reveal who you thought you were for 5 minutes. The bell would go, and then you would ask me the same question. And it's like peeling back the layers of an onion in a way. That's an easy way to describe it. And then I was actually doing it with Daizen, the guy I went with, the monk I went with. And when all of a sudden, I experienced this, what they call Kensho, which is an overwhelming feeling, if you want, of joy, happiness, love, blissed out, absolutely blissed out. And I started laughing. I was just so happy, And he looked at me, and his eyes kind of like, went, wow, and then the bell went, and I went on to the next person, and I was still in it. And she said, "Every muscle on your face is like alive, da-di-da-di-da." Anyway, when it finished, I was still like buzzing in a way. And I said to him, "Can I talk to you about it?" So we went outside the monastery and sat on the veranda. And I said, "Was that a Kensho?" He said, "Yeah, that was a Kensho. That was a big one." And opposite us was this bamboo grove. And this bamboo was blowing like mine are blowing at the moment. And I was no space between me and the bamboo. And he said to me, it was probably the sum total of the teachings you've received from all your teachers. And, I respected him for that, because he could have took the glory for it, but he didn't. You grow up in an environment like I did after the war, during the war, after the war, London, crime, then you get lucky and your life changes here, there and everywhere. And all that makes the sort of person that your personality is. Like your personality is you've sung with the bands and all that and done all sorts of other things, same as me. But underneath all that, there is another essence. And once you tap into that essence, you see that everything else is just laid on.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed listening to you, as I always have.
Good fun.
So I'm going to give you a quick fire question round. I know, right? So to answer as quickly as possible the following questions without thinking too much about it. Okay, the first question is, what makes you happy today?
Oh, my work.
What makes you sad?
Other people's sadness.
If you could change one thing about you, what would it be?
I wish I had hair.
I don't know. You wouldn't be you without Your
not grey hair.
lovely, polished cranium. If you were to be reincarnated, what would you want to come back as?
Well, I won't come back as a human being, that's for sure. Probably a bird, a big bird, something that could soar. I like that book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
I love that.
I wouldn't want to be a
book.
seagull, but I like that. I like that story.
Although down here they are like the kings of the kingdom, aren't they?
Yeah.
Pet peeve.
Oh, politics and religion.
I'm with you on that. Favourite film?
Favourite film? Well, I suppose it'd have to be The Seven Samurai.
A song that, if it comes on the radio, you're likely to sing along to, even if it's only in your own head.
Probably a Leonard Cohen song, really.
I love Leonard Cohen.
Dance Me to the End of Love.
Oh, brilliant. A book that made a big impression on you?
Oh, that's easy. The Little Prince.
Oh, The Little Prince. They've recently made it into a film that's available on Netflix.
I've seen the cartoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the cartoon. No, The Little Prince by Scupere. That brought me to tears. And my parents were in the same flat as us in London, and I'd read it in one go, and I went in the kitchen and I was dripping and bawling and whatever. And my mum said, "What's wrong with you?" So I said, "Oh, it's that book." "Well, what did you read it for?"
A place that feels like home. And that can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be in this country.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Well, I suppose since I've been living in Plymouth since 71, I always like going on the Hoe. Mm. And when I lived in Plymouth and I used to go back to London, the first place I went to was up on the Hoe, because when it's not too busy, it's different every time you go up there. Every time you go up there, it is different.
A smell that you associate with the word home?
Oh, crikey. Incense, I suppose.
You can have dinner with a hero or heroine. Who is it and where would you take them?
Oh, I think that's what's his name? Mickey O'Sullivan, is it?
Oh, Mickey Flanagan, the comedy guy.
I'd love to go out and have a meal with him and just have a laugh. I mean, I associate with him so much. I've watched nearly every show he's ever done on YouTube, and I see him time and time again. And when he performs in somewhere like the O2, and there's thousands of people in there, and they're all laughing their heads off at him. He's just such a cheeky chappy, but he's obviously an observer. He notices people's behaviour. He notices it. He listens to what people's lives are like, and then he can just twist it around to sort of him and his wife. I don't think he'd like a vegetarian meal, so I think we would either go somewhere like maybe the Pasta and Pizza Bar, George and Paul's place on Southside Street.
Brilliant.
But you'd have to be somewhere where you weren't too close to the people next to you, you could have a good old swear,
Last meal on Earth.
Last meal on Earth. Maybe a nice vegetarian meal. Something from Cosmic Kitchen would be really nice.
Cosmic Kitchen.
With a Scotch egg on it, but the veggie one.
Yeah.
I do really think they've done a great job, the girls there. Yeah. And I'd like a meal from there, but I don't think I could take Mickey there because it's not up his street somehow. I think he likes a steak and a burger, but never mind.
Finally, tell me about that picture of that bird on your shelf. Because it's been staring at me this whole interview and I want to know what's it's all about.
That's my friend Charlotte Miller. She makes badges and she lives in Bournemouth. And I met her at a ceramics event. And I liked her budgies. I was going to buy one, but sadly I didn't. And I pinched her card. And her budgie, I like him because he's got this trendy orange hat on, which everybody seemed to be wearing about a year ago. But I put him up there so he can watch me work, same as the fox. The fox watches me work. Dalai Lama watches me work.
And her budgie.
Yeah, that budgie. And who else watches me work? Colin watches me work.
I think Howard Hodgkin watches you work as well. By the looks of it.
Howard would. Yeah. But I did meet him once.
You're like, I've got so many pieces of your
hero.
work.
Yeah, I did meet him at the Theatre Royal.
Wow.
And I got his autograph in the programme. And when I went up to him and asked for his autograph, please, would you mind if I, because I had to be polite to him. I was told by Beryl Cook that he was a bit funny. I said, would you mind signing my programme? And the programme was a double-page spread of one of his pictures. And he went, oh, no, he went. And I thought, I've come up the wrong time. He said, they printed it the wrong way up. And he turned it the right way up and signed it. It's on the wall in the hall.
So I've got one final question before we leave the show today. What advice would you give to the world right now, coming out of this pandemic? And if you could say anything you wanted to the whole entire world, bar the politicians, what would you tell them?
Well, just try and enjoy living.
Yeah.
Really. Just try and find a way to enjoy what life you've got. Sadly, there are trouble spots around the world and people can't do that. But those that could take that advice, just try and enjoy your life and try not to upset people,
Thank you so much, John, for coming on the show today and giving us such an amazing amount of time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been good fun.
I love how John's personal meditative practices mesh with his artistic expression. As John says, all art forms are a form of contemplation on some level, each allowing us to be in the moment with time and our bodies and minds. It is no wonder that so many of us take part in art to escape the suffering state of our everyday existence. John's love affair with the wheel has encouraged each of his pieces to be a unique expression. As he says, not one piece is a repeat. He takes great joy in the improvisational nature of pottery and the push and pull of the colour palettes he uses to inspire him, taken from ideas presented to him by great artists and their application of colour. John's affinity with Japan has helped him to explore pottery in an ancient way, creating raw, imperfect, and as he says, wonky pieces full of character and a perfect capture of the moments in which they were created. I have 2 pieces of John's work, 2 beautiful thumb pots, one of which was created with paper clay. I love to look upon them and feel them with my hands, allowing my eyes to fall on each indentation, each colour and texture. John is one of the last master potters in the Southwest, and it really shows. Whether he would accept that compliment or not, I'm not sure. But my pots will become heirlooms nonetheless, as all good art should. John is a cerebral explorer. He loves to read and express the ideas he finds with others, passing on his wisdom and adding to it. I could talk for hours with him, and his generous spirit is ever present with everyone he meets. You can't teach authentic patience, but maybe because of John's Buddhist practices, he will quite happily indulge you with a good set of ears. One thing that really resonated with me was when John spoke about the mental health aspect of meditation. He said, it's not what I get, it's what I don't get, meaning he no longer gets stressed, compulsive or intrusive thoughts, proud, self-indulgent, anxious, etc. Instead, he gets space, no thoughts, fluidity, expansion. He gets timeless time. There are many different forms of meditation and mindfulness techniques out there to try, each one offering something slightly different. But here is an easy exercise to get you started. Close your eyes and take a deep, cleansing breath. Start to focus your attention on your feet and ask them to relax. Ask your legs to relax. Ask your hips to relax. Ask your stomach and your lower spine to relax. Ask your chest to relax. Ask your upper back to relax. Ask your shoulders, your arms, your hands, and your fingertips to relax. Ask your neck to relax. Ask your jaw to slacken. For your cheeks to relax. Ask the muscles around your eyes to gently relax. Allow any stress or tension in your forehead to just gently float and melt towards your ears. Ask the top of your head to relax. Now focus your attention to that space just behind the eyes, and imagine that that space is gently opening outwards. I wonder if you can imagine with your strong and vivid imagination that you are lying down in a safe and comfortable space. Allow your thoughts to gently rise towards that space behind the eyes. And as they do, imagine them like bubbles in a fish tank. As each thought rises in your mind, see if you can observe it and acknowledge it for just a second. Name the thought in your mind. Say something like, I'm witnessing my thought about how I've just got 3 minutes before I have to pick the kids up from school. And instead of obsessing on what that might mean or how you would spend that 3 minutes, just allow that thought bubble to gently rise to the surface of that imaginary fish tank and gently pop in front of your eyes. As the next thought arises, again imagine it like a bubble just gently moving through the water. Observe the thought as it happens. And again, just let it go. Imagine it gently moving towards the surface of that imaginary space and popping. If you like, you can pause this podcast now and just try this exercise for maybe 2 or 3 minutes and come back when you're finished. How did you find that? Was it easy to let your thoughts go, or did you find it difficult? Without judgment, write down your results in a journal. Keep practicing until the exercise feels easy and fluid. This is a nice one to do either in the morning or just before bed. I love meditation and mindfulness, and personally love the calm that can be found in forest bathing, one of my favourite Shinto practices. And if meditation isn't your bag, check out mindfulness instead. These are simple, in-the-moment exercises, again designed to keep your mind from catching a thought and letting it spiral you out of control. One of my favourites is to get a piece of fruit. Take that fruit and roll it in your hands. Feel the texture against your skin. Lift the piece of fruit up to your nose and smell its fresh scent. Place it on your lips, feeling the difference from how it felt in your hands. Gently bite into it, allowing its flavour to burst on your tongue. Feel your teeth as they pull and crush the skin and then slide smoothly through the pulp. Close your eyes and slowly chew, savouring the flavour and feel as it rolls around in your mouth. As you swallow, feel the mechanism of your throat and esophagus as the food is taken down to your stomach. By the time you've finished this exercise, maybe a whole 5 minutes may have passed. Another quick pick-me-up is to place a pencil so that it's horizontal between your teeth. This simple act sends signals to your brain that you are smiling, even though you're not really, which in turn creates the chemicals your brain associates with happiness And in as little as 2 or 3 minutes, you have already boosted your happy chemicals, allowing a change in your chemical makeup and making a difference in how you may view your next few hours of the day. Finally, John expresses that he is compelled towards his art and can't imagine a life without it. Art is often like that for many people because it is a lifelong journey of building a skill set. With art, the more you put in, the more you get to see coming out. Unlike other jobs where you may be producing work for someone else and therefore once it's done, it's gone and out of your hands, with art, you get to see your progress and you get to work things out for yourself and you get the reward from the reactions of those who see it or purchase it if you're lucky. And the best thing is, unlike most other things, especially nowadays with technology replicating and reproducing thousands of the same objects over and over, you can't reproduce, say, a thumb pot twice. You can't make the same piece of origami in the same way. You can't take a picture of the same bird in the same position, and you can't reproduce a perfect copy of the same colours to paint another life drawing. That original contemplation, that original make, will stay original forever. And that, my friends, is how passion is born. Passion is the building of dreams, the search for the next piece of the artistic puzzle, the creation and destruction available at your fingertips. It is the giving of your energy to something outside of your own body, allowing it to live before your eyes, be that art or love or even more. So be considerate of where your passion may be taking you and know that whatever you do with it becomes a part of your own personal legacy. A piece of art can last for thousands of years and give a beautiful insight into the way a person chose to view the world and how passionately they lived within it. As Buddha once said, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts, and with our thoughts we make the world. Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." Next week on the show, we kick off the Writer's Summer mini-series with Scott Prize winner Tom Fowler, who will be giving his advice on writing and also reading an extract from his new novel, Every Seventh Wave. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the show. If you have a spare moment now, please like, subscribe, and tell me your thoughts in a review on Apple Podcasts, which will really help other people like yourself to find the show. Of course, you can also share the show with your friends by following us at the Brave Moment Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, or on Twitter at Moment Brave, or just follow the Linktree on all of our social media platforms. It's been so wonderful to have you all here with me again. Please get in touch with your own stories, and remember, your brave moment starts now.